Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just went around to three different games that are really, really fun in that kind of afternoon, late evening slate where you have Kentucky, South Carolina, you have Cal, Auburn, you have Kansas, Illinois. Going to be really, really fun games that might be a little bit under the radar, but still are very much worth your time. But let's get into the top 10 teams because there were a couple that did not play good football a week ago. So, what do we have to see from them this week? What do we have to see against a lot of inferior opponents for a lot of these top 10 teams? But we got to see something. We got to see a lot of improvement for some of these teams. And we'll go ahead and jump into this. And Georgia, this one is about as clear cut as it can possibly be. Get a win, stay healthy. That is the only thing that Georgia has to take care of on Saturday because they are by far, or not by far, but they are the number one team in the country and they're playing really incredible football. The one thing I would love to see is Trevor Etienne likely should play. I don't know if a decision has been made one way or the other, but would love to see what this offense looks like with him in it. I would love to see the run game work a little bit differently and maybe you get Nate Frazier a little bit more involved because very good performance from the freshman in week one, but just, show variability, do rotations, make sure everyone's healthy, and then walk out with a win, obviously. But at the end of the day, this is one that you probably don't need to tune into. Georgia's going to take care of business, and as long as there's not that big-time injury or anything bad happen, they're in good shape going into week 3. Ohio State is a kind of interesting one because Western Michigan was a muffed punt away from likely beating Wisconsin a week ago. They are a very good team and one of those teams that I don't think Ohio State's going to struggle with by any means, but could give them a little bit of a scare. But on the Ohio State side, I want to see something different than last week because they did get off to a little bit of a slow start last week. And in a week where you felt like Ohio State was going to be pedal to the metal, trying to prove a point, show that they're going for everything this year, it looked a little monotonous at points. But at the end of the day, if they can come into this game and absolutely dominate, keep everyone healthy, maybe show off that run game with Will Howard just a little bit more, they're going to be in really good shape. This is obviously a game that they should definitely take care of and kind of just move forward from. But at the end of the day, you would love to see just a little bit more efficiency from this offense throughout the game and kind of assert that dominance from start to finish the way that they probably should have done in week 1. This is obviously the big time one, right? You talk about Texas heading up to Michigan this Saturday. There's a lot of things you got to see. There's no doubt about that. If they're going to want to get a win for Texas, there's a lot of things that they're going to have to do. But the biggest thing for me is Texas last year beating Bama was a huge thing. It was absolutely massive. It showed everyone that they were going to be a contender that year. It showed everyone that they were a playoff caliber team in 2023. I feel like beating Michigan on Saturday would be proving to everyone that they're going to be a playoff caliber team for quite some time to come. Because you look at all the things that changed at Texas this past offseason, and it's not even close to what changed at Michigan. I can promise you that. But at the end of the day, they had a lot to replace. They had to replace their top 4 pass catchers. They had to replace probably the 2 best defensive players they had a year ago. A number of things had to change over there at Texas. But if they walk up into Ann Arbor and get a big time win, then it's kind of just proving everything that Sark has been talking about, all the groundwork that has been laid in Austin. It would just kind of be seeing the fruits of that labor, showing that you are a team that can walk into Michigan and get a big-time win, the same way you walked into Alabama and got a big-time win. Show that that was not an aberration, show that that was not an anomaly. That is who you are. You can walk into any building and get a big-time win. So more than anything, we can talk about X's and O's, and we did that in the breakdown, but at the end of the day, it's about Texas showing that they're not going anywhere more than anything else. This is about an attitude thing where you walk in there, you're playing a very physical team in Michigan, but if you can go punch for punch and win that game, everyone's going to be saying Texas isn't just a team right now, they're a team for quite some time to come. Alabama plays USF, and obviously this was the game that gave them a little bit of trouble last year, and maybe it could again, who knows. But at the end of the day, what you need to see from this Alabama team is just look the part. For the first 3 weeks of the season, that's what Alabama needs to do because you walk into that Georgia game in week 4 with any opening, with any weakness in this team, Kirby Smart's going to exploit it. I can promise you that. He is an absolute dominating force in the coaching world, and I think when you look at the next couple of weeks, USF can cause problems with Byron Brown in that run game. If you can stifle that run game and make it look like your defensive front is going to be a dominating force, then you feel really confident going into that Wisconsin game. And then if you can totally stifle Wisconsin, who looks just clunky on offense right now, then you're going to be going to that UGA game thinking, who says we can't beat them? Who says they're going to walk in and take over the SEC today? So it's a lot of kind of confidence building for Alabama early on, where you have a new coach, you have a lot of new players. It's a lot of just proving that you're still Alabama, and then you go into that big game in week 4, and then you prove you're one of the best teams in the country. Notre Dame plays Northern Illinois, and this is a very interesting game. This is one that I'm going to be watching a little bit closer because Northern Illinois can play ball. Ethan Hampton is a very good player, very comfortable in that offense, and Antario Brown, a very talented guy at running back, someone that frankly could play on a number of Power 4 teams if he wanted to. But we saw Marshall knock off Notre Dame 2 years ago. We've seen Marcus Freeman not necessarily coach his best football in some of these games that should be layups but don't necessarily end up being layups. I tend to believe this one's going to be a layup. I tend to believe they're going to be able to get out there with a win, but it's one of those games that you have a feeling you could be looking up in the third quarter and Northern Illinois is within 7 points for whatever reason. But I do expect Notre Dame to win. Would love to see Chris Mitchell get a little bit more involved in the offense, but overall I think it's the same thing as Georgia. It's about winning that game, getting out of there healthy, and continuing on with your possible college football playoff run. Ole Miss gets another layup in week 2, and a lot of this is going to be about Jackson Dart because the reality is this is a game you're going to win. You're favored by 41 points in this game. You're going to be able to get this one done against Middle Tennessee, but at the end of the day, this is about showing you're not going to take your foot off the gas pedal. Ole Miss has been one of those teams in the past couple of years that you play incredible football one week, the next week it looked clunky and weird, and it's just kind of out of sync. Show that you're not going to take your foot off the gas pedal. Show you're a team that can put up 70 on every single team that you play, and show that you are a team that is not going to shy away from anything. And then help Jackson Dart's Heisman campaign out just a little bit on Saturday. So it's one of those games, again, win, stay healthy, all of that stuff, but maybe, just maybe, boost Jackson Dart up in the Heisman just a little bit on Saturday. Oregon going to Boise State is a very interesting one because the Oregon O-line needs to be better. That period, end of story. That's the number one thing you need to see from Oregon this weekend. And Boise State's D-line is not necessarily anything to write home about, but if the run game struggles against Boise State this weekend, I think there's a big-time reason to worry about Oregon because then it goes deeper than just Matthew Bedford being on the field or not. It's definitely bigger than that, and even when you get him back, it'll get better, but maybe not all that better. So it's one of those things that you want to show that you can still impose your will, want to show that you can still run the ball the way that you need to, and the offensive line has to really assert their dominance, and then show you can get explosive. They had very, very few in the game in week 1, and that was a huge reason why it was as close as it was they just could not push the ball downfield. Show that you can do that. Show that that part of the offense did not leave when Bo Nix walked out the door, and then you feel really confident heading into week 3. Penn State playing Bowling Green is one where just keep the good vibes rolling in State College. Don't let this team be one of those teams that plays really good one week and then lets an inferior opponent sneak up on them and makes all the fans worry the next. Just play really well. Be explosive. Have fun in your offense. Let Drew Aller do his thing and then walk out of there with a win because they're in a really good spot where they have a bye week after this one. They have Kent State, Illinois, and then UCLA. They need to just play really clean football for the next couple of weeks. They need to make sure that they are walking into that game at USC with a top 15 matchup, undefeated, feeling really confident in that offense and that defense. So this game, as much as any of the next couple, is just about executing. It's just about doing what you did in week 1 and doing it maybe just a little bit more clean, although it was very, very clean in week 1. Missouri at number 9. Buffalo is who they have this upcoming weekend. This is a ramp-up game for Missouri. This is the first game. The first game is all about getting that depth going, getting all the new faces going, and all of that type of stuff. But you have a couple of games coming up that are going to be tough. Boston College is next week, and we saw what they can do against some top 10 teams. But at the end of the day, I think it's one of those games where you want to see more from that run game. You want to see Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel get involved, and then you want to just see Missouri. You don't necessarily need to see anything special. You don't need to see them, absolutely beat them by 70 points, but you definitely want to see a dominating performance and then roll into Boston College and possibly take them to the woodshed as well. But we'll talk about that when we get there. And then finally, Michigan. Obviously, this is another big one. We talked about what Texas needs to do. For Michigan, it's a little bit tougher because obviously everyone's kind of approaching this game as if Texas is going to walk in there, totally blow them out, and then just walk out with an easy win. That's likely not going to happen. I can almost promise you that. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is find an identity on offense. It felt like in the first week they were trying to call a game for Alex Orji, but Davis Warren was under center. they need to find a way to kind of meld those two worlds, whether it's getting Alex Orji a little bit more involved in the offense, whether it's letting Davis Warren take all of the snaps. I don't know what that looks like, but make sure that you're walking out of this game knowing exactly how you're going to go about business going forward, because the run game did not get going in week one, and they obviously going to need that going forward. So I think it's one of those games where for Michigan, obviously you want to win. Obviously that's going to be a game where they very much expect to win. There's no doubt about that. When Sharon Moore and those boys walk in on Saturday, they expect to win that game. But if they walk out with a 10 or 3-point loss and they have done a lot better things on offense and are the defense that we know they are, I think they still feel really confident. I think they still walk out of this one feeling like they can possibly make a run of the Big Ten title and possibly get to the playoffs. So for Michigan, obviously, they expect to win. They are going to fight their darndest to win this game, but there are a couple of things that you could see in a loss that would still make you feel very confident in Michigan going forward. And overall, these top 10 teams, a couple of them have their work cut out for them. You know, Oregon and Michigan did not play as clean a football a week ago as they very much wanted to play, and they got some pretty big games this upcoming weekend. So we're going to have to see growth in those specific places. We're going to have to see people kind of start to make those differences, but it's going to be interesting. I feel like some of these top 10 teams, obviously there's not those big marquee games outside of Texas, Michigan in the top 10, but there might just be one that sneaks up on us just a little bit. But let's take our final break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about my hot takes for this upcoming weekend. I have a couple that I want to get to and some that are a little bit more outlandish than others, but I got into it and definitely have a couple that I really much like. So I'll break them down right after this, so stick with us.